50 years after the planning of the Poor People's Campaign, I think he would be very disturbed and very disappointed, because he said then that economic injustice was a scar on the soul of America. And if we're going to redeem the soul of America, we have to get rid of economic injustice, we have to get rid of poverty, we have to get rid of slum conditions, and we have to educate the poor and get them beyond this deprivation syndrome, this syndrome of victimization that is associated with this problem of slum conditions and economic insecurity.
Murder rates,
yes.
violence,
if you see in Chicago now, the Chicago freedom movement in which Dr. King was involved started in 1966, spilled over into early 1967. We're talking about 50 years later, and look at the murder rate in Chicago, as you said. And all of that stems from environmental conditions and poverty and the lack of jobs and that kind of thing. So we made strides in the area of economic injustice and the fight against poverty, but we have a long way to go.
But you know, it seems to me that it would be much more cost efficient to create a situation in many of these urban areas that would bring about a better, because it's a very, very expensive proposition to try to control crime. The millions of dollars you have to spend for body cameras and all of that. I mean, that's an expense that could be perhaps better directed towards something, but perhaps people think too much of a socialized society.
Exactly. They fear socialization of society. But hopefully with the appointment of Dr. Ben Carson as HUD Director of Housing and Urban Development, hopefully that will bring some changes in terms of addressing the kinds of issues that Dr. King felt were very, very important, that President Johnson felt were important, in terms of educating slum dwellers, in terms of providing health care for the poor, and in terms of providing jobs and economic opportunities for the poor. We don't know where that's going. But I think, you know, with the appointment of Ben Carson, hopefully
who knows?
We'll move closer to the realization of Dr. King's dream.
Who knows? You know, you never can tell.
Exactly.
Because life works in strange and difficult situations.
Exactly.
You never can tell.
Exactly.
But God knows.
Yeah, but
and I think as a minister, you understand how very, very important it is to understand that God knows, and that somebody's going to come out of this thing, and somebody's going to help not only Africans but all people who find themselves in need and who find themselves with their backs up against the wall.
Yeah, but we need to realize that Dr. King's dream as far as the fight against poverty and economic injustice has not yet been realized, and that it's up to us to bring about the realization of that dream.
And we ought to talk about it more.
Yeah,
I think that the more
at all levels of society,
at all levels
in the churches and government, in our community centers, everywhere you look, educational institutions, we need to discuss these issues and come to some sense of what is our responsibility, our moral responsibility, in terms of moving toward the realization of Dr. King's dream.
What is good for me is good for you. And I think that if we take that attitude, I think we might be able to move.
And I cannot be what I ought to be, Dr. King said, until you are who you ought to be.
That's right. And I think that you've laid a good foundation and a good understanding. And if people not only pay attention to what you're saying, but to read the multitude of books that you've already written in reference to the same subject. And let me thank you, Dr. Baldwin.